Coming up on this episode of Crime Family. Like I said, friends and family never really thought that he was that sick, but you wouldn't know that from all the social media postings that she would post on social media and on the blogs and the communities that she was a part of, trying to find answers for her son and kind of just looking for attention. Like, people were kind of starting to get concerned about Garnett and his health, but more they were kind of getting concerned about Lacey and her mental state as well. She did something that no other mother would ever think of doing, but you can be the judge of whether she had a mental illness or was more sinister than that.
Super sad. Poor kid.
Yeah, it is so sad. Like, if you're, so sad. Just like a helpless child, like 5 years old.
Are you ready for some shocking news?
Hi everyone, welcome back to Crime Family. I'm your co-host AJ, and I'm here with my sisters Stephanie and Katie, as always. Thank you so much for tuning in, and this week Steph is going to be sharing a case with us that I don't think Katie or I know anything about. So yeah, Steph, tell us about the case you're going to be sharing with us.
Hi guys! So the case I'm doing today is Garnett Spears, a 5-year-old boy who tragically lost his life. I first learned about this case actually just recently when I watched a documentary on a bunch of other different cases, and this was one of the episodes on the documentary. The case itself, I don't know if it's been in the media quite a bit when it happened, and it got a lot of media attention on TikTok, as I'll get into, but...
Is it Canadian or no?
No.
Okay.
This woman in the case goes by the name of Salt Mom, is her name in the in the news.
Oh my god, did Nancy Grace give her that title? I feel like Nancy Grace always gives people these titles.
It was not Nancy Grace, no.
It's just so funny.
Okay.
Anyways, it's just a tragic story. She did something that no other mother would ever think of doing. But you can be the judge of whether she had a mental illness or was more sinister than that. But I'll get into all that when I start the case, so I'm just gonna get right into it. Like I said, this case is about a 5-year-old boy named Garnett Spears, and his mother was named Lacey Spears. And Lacey had a bright future. She was born and raised in Decatur, Alabama. She was very shy as a child growing up. She had little friends and was very closed off to the rest of the world. And she kind of just was like an introvert, and she didn't really interact with a lot of friends or a lot of people in her community. But the one thing that Lacey really wanted to be in her life was a mom. And when she became pregnant with a little boy, she was over the moon, and her friends were super excited for her because they knew that she was going to be this great mom, and they knew that she had just a bright future ahead of her. So Garnett Spears was born, and he was this little spitfire of a kid. He was super adventurous and loved the outdoors. And because Lacey was quite shy growing up, she did look to social media for advice on parenting and stuff like that. And she also had a very big obsession about posting pictures of Garnett on social media and everything that they would be doing, just like what parents kind of do today. She seemed to be loving motherhood, and everything seemed to be going fine. And people were just over the moon for her, and they just thought that this was a great thing for her. And they never thought anything of it. They always thought Garnett looked healthy. They always said that he was just this cute little boy who just loved adventure. But deep down, Lacey was feeling really lonely and was desperately looking for attention. Even though she was posting stuff on social media and everything looked great, she didn't really hang out with a whole lot of people. She only hung out with like a few friends here and there. But she just felt like she needed more attention in her life and more people to recognize her. Like I said, she started to post more pictures of Garnett on social media. But this time when she was posting it, when Garnett was just a little baby, she started posting pictures of his health. And according to the documentary that I watched...
What was the documentary? You never said what it was.
Oh, it was called Devils in Suburbia, or I think that's what it's called. It was on Discovery Plus. It was just an episode that they aired. On Crime Watch Daily, I also watched a little interview with her, with Lacey, about her son as well. So, early on in Garnett's life, Garnett was struggling with a little bit of health issues, and the doctors never really could pinpoint what was going on. Lacey would always take him into the doctors quite often to say, like, he wasn't eating well, he was just seemed very lethargic, he didn't seem like his spunky self like he used to be. And doctors kind of diagnosed him with, like, failure to thrive. Like, he wasn't thriving like he would, like a normal child would. And so this is when kind of her obsession with social media kind of started. She started posting a lot of pictures of his health struggles and trying to get a community to get together to support her and trying to just get that attention that she needed, because she didn't really have anybody to help her with Garnett. She had her grandmother, but when anybody asked about the father of Garnett, she kind of just brushed it off and didn't really say, like, who he was or where he was. Later on into the investigation, I'll get into more of kind of her backstory about the father and stuff like that. So, but for friends and family, they didn't really know who the father of Garnett was at the time of his health struggles and stuff. Lacey started a blog to chronicle her search to find a cure for whatever was making her child sick, because she didn't know what was making her child sick, and the doctors couldn't understand why he wasn't eating or why he wasn't thriving like he should. At this time, she told friends that she wanted to leave Alabama and to move to Florida with Garnett to live with her maternal grandmother, Peggy. But that didn't end up happening. She ended up just moving to a little town called Chestnut Ridge, New York. And Lacey and Garnett lived in this little community called Fellowship for the Elderly and Disabled. And upon moving to this little community, she decided to make up a story about Garnett's father, because when she went into the community, because this is also the community where she kind of worked with the elderly and stuff, and when Garnett went to school, so they needed to know, like, kind of the background history of Garnett and, like, who his father was and stuff like that. She made up the story that Garnett's dad was named Blake, and he was a police officer who died in a car accident. And later on during the investigation, we find out that that was actually a lie, and the real father of Garnett, his name was Chris Hill. She says that she didn't understand why, like, her son was getting sick. She never stuck around in the communities that she lived for Garnett to get the actual help he needed, because she constantly was moving around because she was trying to look for a job, or she was just not getting the answers that she needed, so she figured that she'd go to different doctors. So Garnett never really got the proper health care that he needed. And like I said, Lacey took Garnett to over a dozen medical facilities, and in her only interview with 48 Hours, she says that Garnett has suffered from severe ear infections and that he couldn't gain weight or he couldn't eat. While all of this is going on, she was posting everything about her son on social media. The times in the hospitals, when she was moving. Then she would show pictures of him, like, feeling okay and running around in the park, and then the next post would be him in the hospital, like, sick with tubes and stuff. So people were kind of starting to get concerned about Garnett and his health, but more they were kind of getting concerned about Lacey and her mental state as well. When Garnett was 9 weeks old, he would end up getting a feeding tube to help him eat. At 10 weeks old, when he went to the doctors the doctors had noticed that his sodium levels seemed high for an infant. His were like 180 when the normal range is 140. But they never really thought anything of it. They just kind of said, oh, it's kind of like on the high side. We'll monitor it. And he has a feeding tube now, so maybe like he'll get better nutrients and start to feel better. After the visit, Garnett still seemed to not be eating or gaining any weight. And like I said, this is when the doctors decided to give Garnett a G-tube to help him feed and get the nutrients so he could survive. So nothing really suspicious was going on at the time. They just thought he was just not eating or gaining any weight.
Yeah, because I feel like that's kind of a common thing, right? I mean, maybe not common, but it does happen to infants or young children. Like if they're picky or they're not eating. Like I feel like for me, I feel like that was a thing, wasn't it? Like I was very picky and didn't eat a lot, and mom had to give me like Ensure or something, or Boost or whatever, to make it so like I would get the nutrients. So I feel like it's common to, like, if babies are just really picky, that they would think that like, oh, they're just not eating enough, they're whatever.
Yeah, that part is pretty common, but like for them to have, for an infant to have like really high sodium levels, it was kind of,
yeah, that's weird.
They kind of looked at it like,
yeah, but infants aren't picky. Infants eat breast milk or formula, and that's enough to like keep them sustained. So that wouldn't be an issue at this stage.
Well, I don't know anything about kids, infants or toddlers. I don't know. No, I was kidding.
Infants are below 1, and like they don't even eat solid food till they're 6 months. So I feel like that's not an issue unless there's like an actual medical reason why you're not absorbing nutrients.
Oh yeah, I guess. Oh, and you said he was 9 weeks, right? So he was very.
When he was 9 weeks when the sodium levels were high. Then he was 10 weeks when he got the G tube. But I kind of feel like the doctors at the time didn't really like look into like what could be causing his high sodium levels, like, because for an infant to have that high sodium levels is kind of, unless like she was breastfeeding and she was eating a lot of salted things, but to me it's not.
Yeah, how was her sodium? Did they check her sodium levels?
No, they never really talked about her health in the research that I did. It was mostly focused on this little boy. But, like, I just feel like your sodium levels shouldn't be that high in a child that young. Most of Lacey's friends from Alabama and Florida said that Garnett seemed to be a healthy boy. And one friend said that when they came to visit, Garnett seemed like a normal, full of energy and spunky 2-year-old. And she continues to say that he was running around and he seemed okay. And when it came to lunchtime, Garnett would be eating like a normal 2-year-old would eat. Like I said, friends and family never really thought that he was that sick, but you wouldn't know that from all the social media postings that she would post on social media and on the blogs and the communities that she was a part of, trying to find answers for her son and kind of just looking for attention. Like, so Garnett went to school in this little town called Chestnut Ridge, New York, and Lacey also worked in this little community. She worked with the elderly at a senior's home. When they moved here, Lacey seemed like a great mom. She seemed to be really like enjoying motherhood, and when Garnett started school, everything seemed to be going fine. He didn't seem to be sick anymore. But when Garnett turned 5, he returned to the hospital, but this time things turned worse. Garnett started having seizures, and at this time she was still posting stuff on social media. Like, she posted videos of him having seizures and posting him like with all like hooked up to like EEG machines. And
why would she just stand there and take a video of him as he's having a seizure instead of like doing something about it? Or is that like him in the hospital having a seizure?
In the hospital.
Oh, okay. Because I was like, why would she just stand there and film him seizing instead of like doing something? But
you can see in the photos that are posted that when he's having these seizures, she's just kind of just sitting on the bed, and Garnett is set up with like an EEG machine to help him with the seizures. When he came into the hospital, like usually they have to get like medical reports from other places where he was at the hospital, and they could see that he was in and out of the hospital a lot from the time he was a newborn to the time he was 5. So the doctors at this time were kind of getting a little bit suspicious as to why this child was in and out of the hospital so many times. When you see pictures of him on social media, like he seems fine for the most part, but then you see him also in the hospital. So the doctors, with Lacey's consent, just asked if they could like have a camera in the room just because they wanted to like monitor Garnett and just wanted to watch him for 24 hours just to see like how he does. But I think what was really going on, they were trying to watch her. They were kind of getting suspicious of why he was in and out of the hospital so much.
Yeah. Well, I'm assuming she wasn't into that idea.
No, she consented to it.
Oh.
And everything seemed to be going okay in the hospital, and he was thriving again, and his seizures kind of subsided, and he just seemed like he was getting healthier. And 2 days before Garnett was supposed to get discharged from the hospital, things took a turn for the worse. And this time, when the doctors tested his sodium levels, when he got to the hospital prior to this, his levels were 132, which were normal. But then 2 days before he was supposed to be discharged, his sodium levels rose to a dangerous level of 184. And this is when Garnett was then airlifted to Maria Farsi Children's Hospital in New York. So once he was at the Children's Hospital, his conditions improved, but that only lasted for 24 hours. And with that high amount of sodium in his system, his brain was starting to swell. This is when he went downhill and was put on life support. Most of the people who knew Lacey, whether it was from her social media community or her friends, felt really bad for her and wanted to help. So they would post advice, they would donate money to her to help her with like her financial state. They just wanted to help. Other moms who had sick children would help her out and just give her some advice and some parenting advice. But no one could see what was to come next. And this is what haunts her friends and family to this day. And the doctors as well. As Garnett got sicker and sicker, doctors struggled to find out why and what was causing his sodium levels to come so high. The doctors had some suspicions about Lacey because even though she seemed like a grieving mother, her body language and the things that she would say didn't really sit well with them. Which is why they kind of, at the time, consented to record like a camera in her room. They said it was to monitor Garnett, but it was actually to like monitor her to see like how she would react. They couldn't understand why his sodium levels were so high when he had a feeding tube and like he was only supposed to be eating like the food that he was given at the hospital and stuff like that. There is a video that I'm going to show you, and I want you to watch it like super carefully, and I want you to tell me what you think is going on in this video. So what do you guys think about that video?
I don't know. I think, I don't know, it looks like she's walking in and she's trying to hide something what's in her hands. Like, it doesn't look like a natural way you would walk with something. Don't you think that? Like, it kind of looks like she's like, like she knows there's cameras, right? Because you said that they asked if they could film. And she's like walking in, like looking like she's trying to cover something that's in her hand, which doesn't seem like a natural way that you would walk in with something unless you're trying to hide it.
Yeah, it definitely looks like she's like hiding something, but like facing the camera.
Like just the way her hand is played. Yeah. Yeah, it's weird. Why don't you just, whatever, I don't know, walk backwards? Make it, or
put it on the other side of her body. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, she tries to hide it, but badly.
Yeah.
Are you ready for some shocking news? Dun, dun, dun. Anyway, so the video that I just played shows the nurse checking on Garnett and telling Lacey that he seems healthy enough to go home. And after the nurses leave the room, you can see Lacey takes Garnett to the bathroom, which is off camera. And then when she comes back, you can see, according to police documents, it looks like she's holding what appears to be a feeding tube in her hand. I don't know how you could tell from the video, but I guess they looked at it long enough, they know.
Like, yeah, because I couldn't like really tell. Like, I was trying to look at what it.
Yeah.
It just looked like she was trying to hide something, but I couldn't tell what it was. So maybe she did do a good job at hiding it then, because I couldn't tell what it was really.
And then once she comes back with what the police say is that looks like a feeding tube, this is when, like minutes later, Garnett starts looking sick. He's burying his head into the bed. He's trying to vomit, but he actually can't. Nothing's coming up. And this is where things just turn for the worse. So again, Garnett is now having more seizures, and this time Lacey's looking frantic and upset, and the nurse tried to help Garnett, but he ends up slipping into a coma, but then he dies a few days later. And, like, you can see in the video, like, he comes back from the bathroom and he just looks... He just looks uncomfortable. Also, like, in the video, you can see, like, Lacey on the other side of the bed, just sitting there looking like she's looking frantic, but she's not really getting up to, like, help the nurses out. And, like, you know how, like, a frantic mom would be, like, trying to, like, touch the baby as the nurses are trying to do something and they're trying to hold her back. She's just kind of just sitting there. So, after Garnett passes away, the police look into Lacey and they search her home. And in their home, they find a number of salt cans, I guess, like table salt cans around the whole house. A lot of them were opened. That just looked really suspicious to them because, like, who in the right mind needs all this salt? They said, like, there was salt in Garnett's bedroom, like in a can. There was salt in her bedroom. There was salt just laying on the kitchen counter. There just seemed to be salt cans everywhere throughout the house. After their investigation, Lacey was arrested 5 months later on suspicion of poisoning her 5-year-old son with table salt, and she pleaded not guilty to the charges. But when the case went to trial, the jury deliberated for a very short amount of time. It was like 3 hours, I believe. Lacey was found guilty of second-degree murder by poisoning him with table salt. So once the trial was over and Lacey was sentenced, the judge goes on to say that he didn't give her the maximum sentence of 25 years because he says Lacey suffers from Munchausen by proxy syndrome. And this is a condition where the parent or caregiver purposely harms a child to seek attention. And he felt this was a reason why Garnett had died.
That's kind of a weird reasoning. Like, even if she did have that, like, she still did it. I guess if you're saying. But I didn't know that, like...
Well, it's like a mental illness, I guess. But, I mean, still.
Yeah. Oh, I actually didn't know it was a mental illness. I thought it was, like, just something that happened. Like, that situation was called that. I didn't know that was actually a mental illness. So the police said, like, what was the argument that they said that she was holding in that video? It was a feeding tube?
A feeding tube that was full of salt.
Like, so when she took him to the bathroom, she did it in the bathroom?
Yeah.
And then... Okay. I thought, for some reason, I was, like, looking for, like, in that video, like, a box of salt or something. So I thought, but it's a feeding tube. Because
prior to that, like, the nurses came in and checked him and said that he was good to go home. With people who suffer from this syndrome, they're seeking for attention. They want more attention. Her sending him home wasn't an option. Because she wanted that extra attention of, like, look at me, my child's sick, like, that type of thing. So once the nurses left, she took him into the washroom because he still had a G-tube in from when he was a baby, and she hooked him up to the thing, gave him a bunch of salt, and then brought him back out to the bed.
I don't really know how G-tube works, but, like, you just dump salt down the tube and that's what happens.
Well, it's just like a syringe into, like, a tube.
Oh.
Because your body can't absorb that much salt. That's why, like, a lot of people have, like, high cholesterol, because there's too much salt in their system.
But, like, she would have been doing that for years then? Because, like,
yes.
Even when he was 9 weeks, he had high sodium. So she'd been doing that for, like, and how old was he when he died? 5?
5.
So she'd been doing that for, like, almost 5 years? Like, that's crazy.
But it wasn't enough when he was younger to, like... I mean, it was enough to make him sick, but not enough for anybody to really care, I guess? I don't know.
Enough for it to show up as high on a test, but not enough that they're like, well...
Yeah, because, like, he would get sick and then he would, like, a day later he'd be better. And then he'd be sent home.
But that should have been a red flag. Like you said, no child that young is going to have sodium levels that low or high.
And this is why she moved a lot. Because she'd go from hospital to hospital to hospital and seeing doctors upon doctors. Because they would just send him home. And that's not what she was looking for. She wanted that attention. She needed that, I guess, that feeling of being wanted or feeling of being noticed. That my child is sick. Kind of goes back to that case. We never did this case, but the Gypsy
Rose.
Yeah. Like that famous case of her mother doing that to her. It's actually a bunch of documentaries and actually...
Yeah. Till she was like 18.
Did you see? Sorry, this is kind of irrelevant. Sorry, there's a horror movie called Run that is basically that. Like this woman like lies to her child. Did you see that movie?
No, I didn't see it.
It's crazy. I actually like that movie. It's good. With Sarah Paulson.
Yeah, I did see it. Yeah,
I didn't see it.
Yeah.
She gives her medication so she can't walk. So this girl thinks she can walk her whole life, but it's actually like this poison she's been giving her,
just so that she won't like leave her or something. But yeah.
So, like I said at the beginning of this case, you guys can be the judge. Was it a mental illness, or was she just... I mean, it is considered a mental illness, but I mean, she killed her son. So, second-degree murder is not really justice for her poisoning her son all these years.
Well, we've done other cases, like, think of like the Andrea Yates case, where she, not the same Munchausen by proxy, but like she was mentally ill and killed her children. So if we say, like, I feel like there's different levels of mental illness, though, right? Like, if you have a mental illness, you have a mental illness, depending. It doesn't all have to be the same mental illness, but if it's on the, you know what I mean? So I feel like in the same way, I kind of forget what Andrea Yates, like what her sentence was, but I mean, if it's considered a mental illness and she has that and that's what happened, then that's what it is, right? Like, I feel like that is what it is. I mean, it falls under that category for sure.
Yeah, I think you have to have some sort of something wrong with you if you're going to do that to your kid. And I think it's second degree because like she didn't probably mean to kill her kid. She just wanted to keep him sick enough so that he was in the hospital. So maybe she didn't mean to kill him actually, but she did. So that's why it's second degree. But I don't know. What an awful way to go, though, to be like tortured, basically poisoned with salt for that many years and then finally just have this huge overdose. Like, ugh, it's like an awful way to go.
It's just frustrating too, because like you see like stories of like kids who like get sick with cancer and stuff, and it's like this child was perfectly healthy and the mother's making him sick by doing all of this, when like there's other families where it's like their children get cancer and they, you know.
Yeah, they're not choosing for their kid to be sick, and this woman wants
and like
her
this,
child sick. Like, yeah, it's super disturbing.
Yeah, like she's putting herself through what all these other families go through with like a chronically ill child, but completely preventable because she's doing it.
To me, what frustrates me about this case and Lacey in general is that I feel like she could have sought attention elsewhere. Why hurt your child just to get attention from the media? Like, I just feel like there's so many other ways.
Yeah, there are. I mean, there's lots of TikTok accounts and stuff where it's just like kids being super cute and they have like millions of followers. Like, that's another option, you know? So, yeah.
Was it that she wanted attention, or was it just that like she didn't want her child anymore? Which is still terrible. But like, maybe that was just like, if she's doing it since he's 9 weeks old, maybe she thought like, oh, I don't want this child, so I'm going to like, but I guess if she didn't mean to kill him.
Well, honestly, I think like Munchausen by proxy, I think in general, is just to get the attention. Because when I think of like the Gypsy Rose case, her mother did it for like 18 years. And then that's basically how she made her living, because people donated money to her. I forget, some charity gave them an entire house to live in. They got trips to like Disneyland. And so that's just how she lived, was by making her kids sick and getting all this stuff from other people. So she didn't want her kid to die because then she wouldn't be getting free stuff. So yeah.
There's also other cases I've heard of too, where people will do it like, but with themselves. Like, people will fake that they have cancer, or people will do things to themselves to get the attention.
Yeah, that's Munchausen syndrome, and then Munchausen by proxy is when you do it to somebody else. So, yeah.
It's crazy. It's crazy because, again, I feel like I watched a True Crime Daily episode or something of a different case of like a woman who like pretended to have cancer for 6 years and then got like $1 million, like she fundraised $1 million, or like people gave her like raised all this money for her treatment, and like she was just like pocketing the money or something, and like she wasn't even sick. So there are definitely people out there, like it's crazy just in general. But then like the added layer of doing it to like an innocent child, that like, I don't know, it's crazy. When
people do it to themselves, that woman who pretended she had cancer, she wasn't like poisoning herself, right? She was just saying she had cancer. So it's like another level when you're actually physically harming your kid. When you do it to yourself, it's like, oh, I have cancer, but you don't actually hurt yourself.
It's like also sad too. I mean, if someone's that desperate for attention that they're willing to do that, like, but like you said, there's other ways to get attention. You can get positive attention, like Katie said. Millions of followers on TikTok for posting videos of your child doing like a dance or something.
Yeah, and obviously, and why do people need that kind of attention? Like, it doesn't, I don't know, like, it's fulfilling, I guess. I don't know. Something wrong with that, I think, too, though.
Yeah, it's just like a weird, like, they're like addicted to attention. They're just like attention seeking, but at like the worst level, where they're willing.
Yeah, like that dopamine when you see the likes on a post. It's like when you get like 500,000 likes, it's like a huge thing for some people.
I wonder if, like, I mean, obviously Munchausen by proxy was like a thing before social media, but I wonder like how social media impacted that, because I feel like now with social media where you can put it out there and everyone knows about it, that's like more incentive and like for people to do that, versus like before social media when like you could still do it to get attention from doctors, but it's not like out there on like a wide scale.
Yeah, that's true.
So I feel like social media definitely plays into that. Like you said, you get the dopamine with all the likes. And she probably started getting like a lot of likes and a lot of sympathy on her posts and stuff. So she just like needed to keep that going, I guess.
And one other like thing that she got sympathy for was when she said that Garnett's dad was a police officer and he died in a car accident. But that turned out not to be true. And the actual thing was that like his real dad, who was her neighbor at the time she became pregnant, his name was Chris Hill. And, like, she threatened him to, like, destroy his family and destroy his life. And she didn't want him in the picture for that reason. Because he would have found out that she was poisoning him. And she didn't want that person. Basically, she wanted to be by herself with Garnett. Nobody else around her. Closed off to kind of the rest of the world. So she could...
I feel like that was in other cases.
She seems like a bad person.
Yeah, but I feel like that was similar in other cases of that I've heard. It's like it's always like a single mother. It's like a mother who's like has time to be alone with her child. And I also find it too that it's every case I've known, it's like mothers doing it to their child. I've never seen one of like a father doing it to their child.
Yeah, that's true. I can't think of one that has a father doing it. It's always a mother.
Yeah, which is like just interesting. I mean, obviously there probably are cases where it's a father, but like the only ones I've ever heard of was a mother. It's weird.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, same.
So this case went viral on TikTok and Twitter after the documentary came out that aired on Investigation Discovery. And a lot of people just wanted to know why she did it. I mean, we know like for attention, but they just couldn't wrap their head around it. And they just wanted to know what was the number one reason why she did it. People were also very fascinated in this case. There was a lot of, like, it gained a lot of attention, and she was the salt mom, is what, when you look up a lot of our articles, it's like the first thing it says, salt mom. If you were to talk to Lacey today, having that attention after her case also probably made her happy inside because she was getting attention after the fact as well. What I'm saying is, like, she probably loved the attention after the fact. Oh, like, look at me, like, this got so much attention from TikTok and Twitter, like.
Yeah, that's true. But I wonder how she feels now when she can't be on social media getting more attention. That's probably the worst part about this for her. Not that her kid's dead, but that she has no more attention.
Yeah, so she's serving 20 years in prison at the state prison for women in Bedford Hills. She'll be 46 years old when she's eligible for parole. If she does get out, then she still has a whole entire life ahead of her.
And then actually, like, so she got the attention, but she also has a jail sentence to go with it. So hope it's worth it.
Yeah, really.
For some reason, I thought I knew about this case, but there have been so many similar cases to this. Like Katie said earlier, like, to poison your child with salt, what an awful way to die. Because it's like a slow death.
It's just like weird that like salt would be the choice that she would use. Like what was it about salt that like was the thing that she decided?
Maybe because it's like a natural thing in your body, so if it comes up on, because it kind of worked, like it came up high levels kind of, but they weren't too concerned about it. But if there was something else like arsenic or something, they would know right away.
Yeah, sure.
You know,
yeah.
So maybe it was because it was a natural thing.
I watched a Forensic Files episode with Munchausen by proxy, and that's like how I first heard of the term. This was like 10 years ago or something, or whatever, however long ago. But so ever since then, it's like it's stuck in my mind. Like, and there's been so many cases of that since I heard about that. But yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah, I've heard a few other ones where they were killed with salt as well. So not like an uncommon thing.
Yeah, I guess for the reason that you said too, like it's naturally occurring. So
easy to get. Like
Yeah.
someone buying arsenic is a little bit sketch, but I mean, buying a bunch of salt is okay.
Yeah. And obviously, like you said, it worked. Like it showed up on the tests, but it was sodium, so not.
But when they went into her house, they found salt in his room. They found salt in her room, and like salt in the living room, salt in the on the kitchen counter.
Fucking salt in every room, like.
Yeah. To a normal person, like, why would you have salt in your room? Like, you drinking tequila and through the night? Like, why would you have that much salt? Do you know what I mean? It's not natural to have salt in a child's room. I was gonna go on to say, like, one of her friends that she met during her time in New York was saying that, like, sometimes when they would go out to eat with Garnett, they noticed that he was eating, but he looked like he was shoveling it all in his mouth. He was almost like he was starving, but they never really thought that because, like, he looked healthy, and he was, like, running around, and he was doing what all normal 5-year-olds would do.
Super sad. Poor kid.
Yeah, it is so sad. Like so sad. Just like a helpless child, like 5 years old. And like totally preventable too, which is so annoying, like I was saying before.
Yeah.
Like there's so many other things that can go wrong, like, and this is an intentional thing that could be avoided. Sad. Okay, so that's it for this week's episode. If you like the show, you can follow us on all the social medias at Crime Family Podcast. On Instagram, we're at Crime Family Pod 1 on Twitter, and our Facebook is Crime Family Podcast. And you can also email us your case suggestions and your feedback for the show. You can email us at crimefamilypodcast@gmail.com. And check out our website at crimefamilypodcast.ca. Also, we just recently started a Patreon page. Join us at the tier 1, 2, or 3 levels. You get exclusive extras such as mini episodes, free merch, or a new crime series, Doc Talk. So you can find us on patreon.com/crimefamilypodcast. And we also have our merch store on Redbubble where you can get our Crime Family logo on lots of different items. So we're very excited to have that open. So that link will be in the show notes as well. And yeah, thank you so much for listening to this episode. Join us next week for part 1 of a 4-part miniseries. So every season we do a miniseries, and we are going to be doing a miniseries this season on Canadian serial killers. So yeah, it's gonna be a really good series. So next week will be our first part for that. So check it out next week. We'll see you next week for that. So thanks so much, and until then, take care. Bye.
Bye.
See ya.